Hello everyone. So a while ago I told the story of Charles Becker, who was the first American police officer sentenced to death and executed in America. Today's story is on Len Davis. He was also a former corrupt police officer and he is currently on death row. Len Davis was born on August 6, 1964. As an adult, he decided to become a police officer for the New Orleans Police Department. His track record as a police officer was far from stellar. There was a lot of crime in New Orleans, and instead of there being a group of upstanding police officers, majority of the officers within the NOPD during that time were corrupt, just like Len. Len was given the nickname RoboCop by the community because of his size and aggressive nature towards people. Between the years of 1987 and 1992, he was suspended 6 times, and over 20 people had filed complaints against him. Despite the bad track record, he was still awarded a Medal of Merit in 1993. Not only was the community aware of the corruption within the police department, but the FBI was as well, and they decided to do something about it starting in 1994. The FBI placed undercover civilians and officers in the city for their sting, Operation Shattered Shield, and they found out that Len was extorting protection money from a drug dealer who also happened to be an FBI informant. They also wanted to solicit NOPD officers to guard a warehouse holding illegal drugs for shipment. The FBI sting abruptly came to an end on October 13, 1994, because an innocent woman by the name of Kim Groves was murdered and Len was behind it all. Jasmine Groves, who was the daughter of Kim Groves, penned a letter to the public a couple of years ago. My name is Jasmine Groves, and I am the youngest of 3 children of Kim Marie Groves. A former New Orleans police officer, Len Davis put a hit on my mother in retaliation for her witnessing him beat a teenager in our neighborhood and filing a complaint against him. The day my mother reported Officer Davis was the day before my 13th birthday. About 3:30 p.m., she called the office to file the complaint, and it usually took 24 to 72 hours for an officer to be notified of a complaint against them. Unfortunately, Davis knew within hours of my mother filing the complaint. By the time she made it home that night, the hit to take her life was already set. Because it was the night before my birthday, my mom was planning my party. My cousin and I were having a sleepover, and we were playing cards. My mom came into the room and started singing the happy birthday song. I smiled the whole time she sang because she always made me feel special. For some crazy reason, it felt like she knew she would not get to wish me a happy birthday the next day. After she walked out of the door, within seconds, the phone rang. I was always the one to run to answer it, but that time I wish I hadn't. As I said hello, all I heard was a woman's voice screaming into the phone, "Kim has just been shot, and I think she's dead." At that moment, my heart stopped. I was stiff. I could not think, I could not talk, I was stuck. I was wishing she'd say she had it wrong, it was a mistake. I dropped the phone and ran screaming to my family. As we all ran out of the door, we saw my mother's body lying in the street, lifeless. As I dialed 911 for help, it took them forever. The next day, I still pushed myself to go to school, even though that didn't last long. I tried to still face life as normally as I could, but nothing was normal about my life anymore. Only a few months later did I learn that the same people I called to help save my mother were the ones who killed my mother. I lost all trust in the police. I remember that to protect and serve was always on NOPD's police cars, and now it's not anymore. I take it as a sign of them no longer protecting and serving. 26 years later, after my mother's murder, my mother's murderer still appeals his sentence. Police corruption has gotten so bad that it seems like it's normal, and that is a sad truth. I feel it's injustice where justice is delayed and denied. My mother died because she stood up for her civil rights and the young people in the lower 9th Ward. Taking a stand should not mean taking a death sentence. In order to stop these corrupted cop killings, we need more police to love their job and take a stand with the people. Our voice must become one. I truly believe that citizens and police officers must trust each other instead of working against each other. Without this happening, all I see is failure and chaos. We cannot have police feeling that they are above the law. Just as police cars have to protect and serve, that should also be reflected in their policies. On October 10, 1994, Len was out with his partner Sammy Williams. Kim Groves witnessed the 2 officers harass and hit her play nephew Nathan Norwood because they believed he was a suspect in a police officer's shooting. Kim then filed a complaint within the next couple of days after the assault to NOPD's Internal Affairs Office. Len learned about the complaint on October 12th. As mentioned earlier, Len had been extorting protection money from drug dealers in the area. Two of these dealers were Paul Hardy and Damon Causey. The men would often do favors for Len in exchange for protection, and the last favor he was able to request was for them to kill Kim Groves. It was now around 5 o'clock on October 13th, and Len paged for Paul. Paul called Len, and they went over the plans to kill Kim. Paul was to be the designated shooter, while Len and Damon were tasked with cleaning up any evidence. They also planned what would happen after the murder. Len was supposed to meet Paul and Damon at the police station to view photos of homicide cases. Len and Damon met up. They drove around in Len's patrol car searching for Kim in the neighborhood. At around 7:30 that night, they picked Paul up and drove back to Kim's neighborhood and let Paul out so he could walk around and find her. Len then left the neighborhood again to take Paul home because they were having a hard time finding Kim. Len then drove around with his partner Samuel, but hours had gone by and still no Kim. Len ended up calling Paul complaining, but Paul reassured him that the job would get done. Finally, at around 10 o'clock p.m., Len and his partner spotted Kim near her home, so he immediately paged Paul. After calling Len back, Paul made his way to Kim's neighborhood. Samuel's shift was over, so by this time he left Len alone in the patrol car. At around 10:45, Kim was still not dead, so he called Paul to complain once again. He described what Kim was wearing and how she looked in detail. At 11 o'clock, Paul found Kim and fatally shot her. Len was unaware of the FBI being on his trail, so they quickly found out he was behind the murder of Kim Groves. The FBI also busted 9 other police officers employed with the NOPD as being corrupt officers, and they were relieved of their duties. In December 1994, the government filed a federal indictment against Len, Paul, and Damon. All 3 men were tried together in front of a jury. In July 1995, the government filed 2 notices of intent to seek the death penalty for Paul and Len. In August 1995, the men were charged with conspiracy to deprive Kim of her civil rights while acting under color of state law, depriving Kim of her civil rights by use of excessive force by shooting her with a firearm resulting in death, and willfully killing Kim to prevent her communications to a law enforcement officer regarding a possible federal crime. On April 26, 1996, Len was sentenced to death, Paul was also sentenced to death, and Damon was sentenced to life in prison after he rejected a plea deal that would have given him 6 to 9 years in prison. After Len was sentenced, he left the courtroom and refused to return. The Fifth Circuit reversed Len and Paul's death sentence when the conviction for witness tampering was overturned. After a new sentencing hearing, the new jury agreed with sentencing Len to death on October 27, 2006. Paul was also resentenced to death, but in 2011, his sentence was commuted to life when the judge found him to be mentally retarded. As of today, Len is currently on federal death row and is imprisoned at the U.S. Penitentiary Terre Haute in Indiana.